the audience here, no doubt, is in various stages of what we call going Google. Really looking at it as kind of their primary tool set for work. And one of the things we'd like to really understand and get from you is, how did you make the decision to go Google? And what was that click for you? And then as part of that, kind of what were the business goals, or what were you trying to solve for from a business perspective? So JB, I'll hit you first.
Okay, so our G Suite story started in 2012. So let me come back to a little bit to Veolia. So Veolia is about water, waste, and energy. But it's three businesses that are very, very local, meaning that the business units has to be very autonomous to cope with the local constraints and the local regulations. At that time, when we started to think about these new mail systems, we were managing more than 200 mail systems, so quite complex, a lot. At that time also, we started to think, and actually the CEO of Veolia started a new company strategy called One Veolia, and it becomes very critical for us to think about a global cooperation, a global collaboration. Okay, so when we launched the request for proposal for these new mail systems, our three key drivers were global cooperation, global collaborations capabilities. The second were cost reduction, for sure. And the last one, very important for us, was security improvements.
Thank you.
So, well, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation is a publicly funded corporation. We have mainly two big divisions, the French division and the English one. And we have about 6 television networks with producing news content and entertainment content for also digital, but radio. When we moved to G Suite, it was 6 years ago today, in 2013. It was mainly for switching to our email client to Gmail. We didn't foresee and we didn't think about all the collaborative aspects of the suite at that moment, because if you go back in time, if you look what was collaboration at that time, it was mainly email and attachments. But today, and well, we went with the Next Mile program also, but today collaboration has exponentially grown within CBC, and it's now part of our DNA, I would say. Collaboration is one of the strongest elements that we had out of G Suite. But we couldn't foresee that at that moment when we made the decision to go Google, but we're happy with that.
What year did you make the decision to go Google? Do you remember?
2013.
Got it. Why don't you keep the mic? I've got the next question for you. You know, when you're thinking about doing a migration, right, there's always complexity around that, right? And you have to have a plan. So could you tell us a little bit about, once you've made the decision, what was your plan to execute, and what did that look like?
Yes, well, we migrated around 15,000 accounts at that time to the Gmail. We had pre-work for 3 months in preparation of the migration, but the migration happened in over 1 weekend. So from Friday night to Monday morning, we switched all those accounts and we were live with Gmail. Of course, when you have a plan, well, you have to think about change management. This is one of the key aspects, I would say, because it's a mindset going Google, I would say, and yes, it will be different. We're fighting against 2 decades of Microsoft Office. You know, they've been there, they are mature, people learn and work with that for almost 2 decades. So when they come in a working environment, we don't think of training those people on those resources. We take for granted that they know already. Going G Suite is a little bit different, so we had to put emphasis on training, which we didn't do good at the beginning. We just realized later in the roadmap that we had to put more emphasis on training. But if you go Google, I would advise to train a lot your people. And we have a strong culture also of supporting our end users. So support is really important. So people know who to get to if they have questions or things like that.
Question for you. You mentioned you kind of flipped the switch, so to speak, over the weekend. Why did you approach it that way versus kind of going region by region or office by office, that type of, from a deployment perspective?
Well, I wasn't part of the team who did the migration at that time because I can't speak for them, but I could imagine that we wanted everyone to be into the same environment, the same system at the same time to start collaborating together. And marking also the before Gmail and going Google. And we had help also from a consultant, Onyx Networking. Google provided us some tips and tricks with this consultant company. So we were really happy that we could rely on someone else, a partner, to help us to migrate and complete the migration successfully. Got it.
JB, I know you actually have a slide that we wanted to put up here to actually give the folks here kind of a vision of what your plan was. Do you want to walk us through that?
Yes, it has been a long journey, as it is mentioned. Just before, I would like to explain my role. So I'm head of the digital workplace. What does that mean for me? For me, it's managing 4 functional domains. The first one is the collaborative tools, collaborative product, including, for sure, G Suite. The second is about devices. All the devices related to the employee, including Chromebooks, including Jamboard, including the management of smartphones via Google's. The third one is about security. Security of the digital employee, meaning, for example, digital identity, meaning also single sign-on, G-Vault, all that stuff. And the third one, which is very important also, is application migrations. I have dedicated a team to support the business unit to migrate what we call the user-developed applications. So it's Excel macros, access applications to G Suite or other software. So that's the whole round of activities I need to manage. So to come back to the plan, it has been a long journey. So it started in 2013 with the migration of 130,000 users to Gmail. And at that time, we didn't promote all the components of G Suite, but only on Gmail. So, but it allows us to launch our cloud strategy. And that is step 2 of this plan. We launch move to cloud initiatives and data for business initiatives. The first one is about moving infrastructure and applications, legacy applications, into the public cloud provider. And the second was to develop new business applications, cloud natives. So what is the link with G Suite? The link is because when you do that, you allow more and more your application, your portfolio application, your information systems to be accessible by web browser. And this was very important to launch the third step of this journey, which was a big, ambitious program called SATAWAD for Secure Anytime, Anywhere, Any Devices. This was a program to develop a full integrated collaborative experience, including the full component of G Suite, plus hardware, plus other software, and plus devices like Chromebook to get this full experience hardware. We started this SATAWAD program in 2018, and we launched it with the headquarters, because the headquarters is quite interesting in terms of use case. I will give you some example. We had to manage 300 meeting rooms, fully integrated with video, Hangout Meet hardware, HMH. With the calendar, with room pads, all that stuff, very, very integrated. We had to manage also large rooms with lots of remote connections. We have to manage also printing. We have to manage also representative from all BUs, because you are at the headquarters. We manage also, by definition, the VPs that are very demanding. And for sure, more demanding than the VPs, the personal assistant of the VPs. And we have to manage also the CEO willing to use more and more the collaborative tools. So these experience help us to convince the rest of the company, the local CIO and the local BUs to move forward. We are today in that deployment, and we are today at the end of this long journey.
You mentioned that one of the most important people were the executive assistants. Can you tell us a little bit, did you do any extra care in educating them or spending time with the executive assistants and getting them trained?
Good question. These programs was not just technical programs. It was much more with communications, marketing, gaming, trainings, all that stuff. And we invented what we call gilet vert. Alors, green jacket. And the green jacket were special people running inside the headquarters and able to come just close to the personal assistant or anybody to manage any situations and to solve, by example, being just close and to fix the problem. Very, very efficient.
Okay, maybe they needed yellow jackets. I know we call them Google Guides as well. Travis, a question for you. I know you came from Deloitte. You were actually over at Allstate. I know you've been at Google now for a while, and you manage our productivity optimization programs for all of our professional services as it relates to collaboration. Would love to just maybe get your perspective on kind of what you've seen from our customers with large-scale migrations. I know we've got customers who might have 1,000 users, but we're up to 130,000 plus at Veolia and others. So what does that look like?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So as you mentioned, I work with some of our largest customers for our Americas region, and it can always be a little bit difficult when we walk into a situation because we never quite know what we're going to get with a large customer. Every customer is unique, especially at that level and with that number of seats. So our job is very fluid, so we kind of learn as we go. But when we approach, especially from a change management perspective, there are a few things that we kind of keep as like our home base and our foundation that we make sure we go in there and actually start with. And the first thing is just a level setting with our customers, what truly change management is there for and why we're actually focusing on it. Because I think today, especially with my background in neuropsychology and neuroscience, your neurology is one of the things that we don't really think a lot about, and we don't leverage that a lot. And actually, change management is all based on neuroscience. So when I talk to executives, I definitely want to take the time to walk them through the fact that people naturally resist change. And the reason they do it is in your neurology, not because they're being difficult. And I think our executives and our leaders sometimes forget about that, and they think that it's a reaction that people are doing to them versus the fact that you're actually doing something to your people and they're going to resist it no matter what. So just level setting a little bit about, why do people resist change and why is it so important to manage that resistance? So after we've gotten through that, going into kind of the planning of how we move forward, there's two major pieces that we always start off any project with, especially when we're moving to G Suite. The first is a stakeholder assessment. So essentially what a stakeholder assessment does is it looks at all of your really critical players across the company. And it gives you an opportunity to actually look at each of them individually and assess where they are on their own change journey. Because every executive is going to go through that.
Are you doing that by department or is it kind of by role? How are you looking at that?
Yeah, by both. So it depends on the situation with the company, but you want to look at every single person by department or by role that's going to have a major impact on the project. So the question that I always ask is, who's going to make this fail? And those are the people we want to focus on, and we want to assess where they are. So once you've kind of assessed them and you've figured out where they are on their own change journey and where they are in supporting the project from a G Suite perspective, then you can kind of move into the second piece, which is a change impact assessment or analysis. So what that is we actually look at all of the changes that are going to happen to the organization. So a great example is, you're moving from, today you use a template that might be in an Excel document. Tomorrow you're going to use Sheets, right? So where is that template? Where does it live? Are we going to actually create a new template? all of those things, that would be an impact of change to the end user. So we make a list of all of those things, who it impacts, how many people it impacts, and those 2 documents alone feed the rest of the change management planning, from training to communications to town halls, all of that. And that's how we really approach and make sure that we're covering all of our bases when it comes to change management.
Got it. Thank you. One of the things that I'm sure people have heard is kind of when we talk about going Google is culture, right? And I think as we're kind of looking at kind of, since going with G Suite as your platform from the enterprise, what kind of cultural shift have you seen? You maybe give a couple of examples of just some little insights or tidbits that you've seen. Gabriel.
Yes, well, definitely collaboration is the #1 benefit we had immediately, well, using more the G Suite tools, and especially since the last 2 years, they have so much evolved into new features for enterprise. So it's easy for people, once they made the mind shift and go into the G Suite, to start collaborating. And basically, we use collaboration within the G Suite editors to lower the level of email. Whose inbox not full today? You know, we're receiving tons and tons of emails that we need to treat but why not collaborate directly within the same document all together, leaving comments, suggestions, leaving assignment and tasks, so everyone knows who's responsible for which section or which part of the spreadsheet, for example. So a real concrete example is communication people. They will never go back. If you think the workflow, how it was to produce a communique, last-minute communique, you have to create a Word document, send it by email, then gather everyone's comments and suggestions, then merge all of that into a single document, then redo another approbation round. Today, everything is centralized in a simple, single Google Docs. You see the changes as they are coming, questions popping up, and answers coming right after. So those people, they will definitely never go back. CBC also is an Olympic broadcaster, and during the last games in Pyeongchang, we used a workflow that we customized with spreadsheets, form, and calendar also to create kind of gathering all the interview requests for the athletes that were on the field. So people from all our 50 stations all across Canada could request an interview with a hometown star or a special athlete who did great, or, well, for an interview. So they could gather and funnel all those requests into a single spreadsheet, and we had coordinators working from the spreadsheet and booking calendar interview with athletes. So it was streamlined, it was easy, and they were really working and putting the effort for what they do best, and not searching emails and maybe dropping some emails or important information because they didn't see that coming in their inbox. So definitely, this is something that nobody would ever go back. Collaboration now is part of the, I would say, the cultural enterprise culture that we have built, and we keep building on at CBC.
That's fantastic. Thank you. JB, do you have any good stories to share about Veolia?
I saw 2 areas of drastically change of way of working. The first one was the decision process making, and the second one I call the collective delivery of documents. So the process making decisions is very, very easy today. Just one click in your calendar, then you can arrange the meetings with the stakeholders of the decisions. It's so easy, it works fine. You don't need 1 hour, you can just book 30 minutes, and it works very well. So now the decisions are taken quicker and with broader people and with the relevant people. So that's the first point. The second, I have some illustration for the second, collective delivery of a document. As the first illustrations, my manager, so Hervé Dumas, who is Group CTO of Veolia, 3 or 4 months ago, was trying to build a new document talking about a new concept called digital sovereignty. You maybe hear about that. Okay, so at the initial stage, he just share a draft of this document and give it to his management teams, and we collectively co-build, co-design, co-construct this document, putting our vision of what can be digital sobriety. And we are coming from different universe. We have different view of what is the sobriety. And this was a real experience of developing something together. So I was very impressed by this approach.
That's pretty impressive. So I know Hervé, who leads the Veolia technology team. So let me just ask you this. Did he just put in one line in the document and then have the rest of you author the document and create it?
No, actually, but we discussed some wording also. We discussed also the form. We discussed anything, and we challenged him.
That's great.
And at the end, he decided.
That's great. Yeah, so it's really kind of ideation on the fly. One of the things that you probably have all heard about kind of as you've been at the sessions over the last few days is this program called The Next Mile. It's a program that we work with some of our key customers and really engaged, but with our product and engineering team, not only to help understand their business use cases better, but how we can really continually improve the product. So I know both of you were participants in Next Mile, but Travis, I'd love to actually do you mind just giving a snippet as to what the Next Mile program entails and how it works?
Absolutely. So many people probably heard about Whirlpool's story that they shared at the keynote at Next around the Next Mile. So the Next Mile is a pretty unique program for Google, and it really is an opportunity for our companies that are wanting to go past just the normal deployment to really push adoption to actually move out of their current platform. And it's really mutually beneficial between Google and the enterprises that we support, because we not only get information from them on what they want to see in a product, but they also get real-time feedback from us around, things that they're trying to do, so barriers they're running into, and they get to see, workarounds or things that we've come up with as ways to solve these unique problems. And so the Next Mile program, in essence, has a few parts. The first is that you get access to the known issues list, which is a compiled list of any known issue that has been logged with Google based on G Suite usage and barriers that other companies have run up against. So it's really, really useful for a company of your guys' size, because you've already seen many of the things that other companies have seen using this list. So if there's something on that list that has been solved, or that our team has come up with a good workaround or an extension or something that can do it for you, it's all listed there. So whenever you have people kind of asking those questions like, well, how do we do this? How do we move into this new world? How does this work? It's easy to just look at that known issues list and say, oh, someone else has actually had that question before us, and here's how they solved it. So that's a really, really big benefit of the Next Mile program. The other part of the Next Mile program is that you're going to do a couple things as an enterprise. You are going to be tracking any exceptions to people that cannot move out of their previous platform. So the idea of the Next Mile program is we look at data to tell us which areas of the business are going to be ripe to basically go straight to G Suite and not have to actually use any kind of interdependencies between two different platforms. When you go to that business unit and you say, guess what, you're going to go all in on G Suite, we're going to take away licensing from the previous platform, that business unit has the opportunity to kind of say, I don't think that's going to work for us. And this is actually the part where the Next Mile program plays a big role. And the idea is, okay, we're going to log that as what we would consider a possible exception. So with a possible exception, we look into it and we dig into that issue as to why they can't do what they need to do in G Suite. A lot of times, probably 90% of the time, it's more habit than it is actually an issue. So with that, we come back and we say, actually, that's not an exception to going out of your current platform. Here's the workaround and here's how you do it. And then we would move them into G Suite and they would remove the other licensing. So if it is an actual exception, it gets logged on that known issues list and our teams actually work on it. And as part of the Next Mile program, you get meetings with Google, actually one-on-one, to talk about your own known issues list and things that Google engineering for product is working on to address the issues that you've seen, or anything that we can bring to your company that we think would help you work in a different way. Because we see with a lot of customers that they come to us and they give us very specific things that they want to do. And us being Google, sometimes we take that and we say, but is that the way that we should be working in the future with G Suite? And we kind of put those two up against each other. Because sometimes there's a different way of working that Google wants to create that would actually help solve the issue, but not be a one-to-one match with their previous platform. A good example is Big Sheets from Google, because that was actually to solve an issue of people saying that there weren't enough cells in Sheets. Well, a lot of that was due to the amount of data. So now we're using BigQuery and pulling that into Google Sheets as a different way of working. So you don't need 100 million cells in Sheets. You just need to use BigQuery, and you pull data from BigQuery. So it's a really cool program, and it's very different from being a beta tester. It's really being on the front lines of product development.
Yep. And there is a commitment around NextMile as well, where it's gathering kind of the data and the requirements and then getting that over to Google. Maybe JB, what's kind of been your experience in the NextMile program?
I would say that we were able to link with the product manager of Google. And so we are quite a big company. We have some, we are expecting some features to help us to deploy the product or to help us to adopt the product. And sometimes we were looking to our strategic partner and tell us, please develop this feature, please. And so with this program, we were able to discuss closer with, from our product manager to Google Product Management.
That's great. Gabriel?
Yeah, well, we benefit from the NextMile project, definitely. We had Googlers, we invited Googlers in Montreal, the Montreal main station, for 2 days conducting focus groups and being in relation with end users so they could test such features as Big Sheets. All the announcements that we saw at Google Next, there are many things that were discussed during these 2 days focus groups with PMs and researchers from the Google team. Definitely submitting known issues will help us also see about our roadmap for development. If we need to put emphasis to put resources to develop a homemade solution or to wait for that feature to be available next quarter. Because every quarter we have new releases, and we have also pretty much every month new features to give certain at some end users, I would say. We use the same as GB. We use not the green shirts, but the Google Guides. But our project was called Mission G, tailored around space exploration and things like that. And Google Guides will add access to those features, so they could see the new things coming up and test them and give direct feedback to the PMs. So this is a big part, I think, of the adoption. It helps people to see what's coming up, what's the roadmap, and well, someone's listening, and you can submit. You have a direct influence on how the products evolve over time.
Got it. So we talked a little bit about the green jackets and the Google Guides, but maybe give us, how do you even find, what is a Google Guide within the company? How does that even start?
Well, Google Guide basically are super users, so people inclined to help others who are embedded into their teams, and those people, usually they know better the workflows and the work processes of their own teams. They are our ears, I would say, and our voice within their teams. So we put a lot of emphasis of providing those guides, information, and communication. Our project, we wanted to be fully transparent about acknowledging sometimes when some features are not good enough or not yet developed or things like that, but to listen to those people and have I would say, the temperature or the feedback from direct feedback from their teams, so we could help support them, find solutions. And sometimes solutions means to go to app dev or to ask our IT people to help to get a custom-made solution, but to help the transition from the Office world to the G Suite world.
Got it. So just to clarify, our Google Guides, they're not all technical then, are they?
No, they are.
They just
well,
volunteer?
basic end users, volunteers. They don't have to be geeks. They don't have to be that much technical. yeah, about the technicalities and things like that, because we have strong support teams. They know that they can always rely on support teams or the Mission G team to help them find solutions. So it's basically any end users who's inclined to help others. We had, because we're a broadcaster, we produce some TV shows, live broadcasting, YouTube across Canada for all our guides. So we had those kind of activities about communicating to guides new tips and features and new ways of working. One of our guides had the initiative to create a no email day, so they cannot send, well, I think they give them each 10 emails a day, no more. So they can receive a lot, of course, but they cannot send more than 10 emails, and they have to think of initiative how to, well, leverage chat, leverage phone calls, or just go in person and speak with others. So those are the kind of things that we try to create around the collaboration culture, I would say, with G Suite. I
want 10 emails. I bet you all do. That's fantastic. So the softball question, actually, it's the tough question. You know, as you're looking at transition, there's always things that you wish you knew, right? Or, oh, right, this is very frustrating. So as you were going through the transition and moving over to Google, now that you've made the transition, what are things that you both actually would have liked to have known then that you know now?
Yeah, I would say the transition management, a change management plan is really important. So to think in advance and be present with, a strong culture of support, but having also a strong sponsorship. And I have to admit, CBC, we struggle a little bit with that. So you brief your VPs, you brief the CEO about the project, the relevancy and everything, and they say, yeah, go, okay, that's cool, that's fine. But then you have to reinforce the message over and over again, and have those people to drive the change also from the top. What happened in CBC is the end users, they are the one who is using the suite and seeing all the benefits of with the collaboration. So they are raising the bar more and more, and they want more from Google and from the management also. So those are the kind of things that if we have planned better ahead, I would say we wouldn't have to struggle with that today. We are 80% of users are using G Suite. The remaining 20% are hybrid, I would say, with Office and Google. So there's no, we're in a hybrid environment. We still let people work with other tools when they are doing the best, but for 80% of the end users' needs, I would say G Suite is pretty much the tool everyone's using, and it's our #1 productivity tool. So those kind of things. What else? I think app dev because we have an IT cost-centric approach within our business, and we have a lot of old legacy systems that we need to move forward with all the announcement that we had with the Anthos and things like that. I'm very excited to bring this back to my corporation and work with IT people to have a better plan for cloud migration or transition to a new environment. So I would say those are the challenges we're still struggling with, but we're having solution, and we have to think, I would say, a little bit outside the box to make the transition happen more smoothly. Yeah.
Great, thank you. JB, kind of what do you wish you had known then that you know now?
As you saw on the diagram, our journey was quite long, so clearly we underestimate initially the change management. We also underestimate that even if you don't promote the other component of G Suite out of Gmail, and the end users are starting to use it, these components will change the way they are working. So you need to consider it also. So that's the first point. The second point I would like to share is also, as it is a collaborative tool, you need to understand that your trainings should be also collaborative oriented and not just train one feature to one guy. So it should be a use case of collaboration. So if you train someone to explain how to use the comment, you need to explain how they will assign some task to someone and how the guy that will receive the task will manage it and how it will be completed. So that's very important. And the last point which was for me the most important regarding this journey, is what we call the product adoption. Product adoption is something very important when you have to optimize and maximize the usage of any component of G Suite. Just think about, we are 170,000 of end users using G Suite. If you maximize the usage of one feature of one component just for 1% of the end user populations, you just achieve a great something. So you just achieve things very valuable for the company. So what we developed is, in our digital workplace team, we developed a similar role than the product manager. We call it also product manager for each component of G Suite. So they can prepare any new evolution of a feature, a release, or new versions. And sometimes you have to manage at least communications, and sometimes much more than the communications. So product adoptions, optimizing, maximizing the usage of all the features, of all the components of G Suite is really strategic.
Fantastic. And then Travis, do you have any comments on just kind of communication? I mean, I know you came from outside of Google and then you joined Google. I know you've used many different tools, but kind of around kind of that, kind of the change management, kind of what are things that you've seen companies do successfully or things that they wish they had done successfully?
Yeah, I think I've probably seen more of the latter than the former. But even in my own journey to G Suite, joining Google was night and day. I actually left my previous role on a Friday and I joined Google on a Monday. So I went from Outlook to G Suite in 3 days. And I got in and I was kind of, I guess, arrogant in the assumption that I had used Gmail in my own personal life. So I was like, this can't be that hard, right? But I got into it and I was like, okay, actually, I've never used this for business before. So this is a big change. I didn't know all the things that you brought up. Like, how do you assign someone a task, but also how do you manage your own tasks that others have assigned to you? So I guess for me, I've taken that knowledge and I try and bring that to our customers, because a lot of times we make that assumption that it's going to be a simple transition for Gmail, and it's really not as simple as we think it is. And there's a lot that we do within our email that is very tightly held to us, because it's very important how we do our day-to-day and make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. So that would be my big point of advice, is make sure you're focused on, forgetting about all of the preconceived notions of what people might have seen before, and just focus on training, and making sure they're actually very prepared for that transition.